Welcome to the Manufacturing Shakeup. We're your hosts, Ellen Feldman-Ornato
and Jenny Drescher. We're talking with dynamic women from across the manufacturing scene in Connecticut. Hey, friends in listener land. You ever have a time that you spent in doing some coursework? You're like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to take a month-long webinar class on blah, blah, blah. And then it all goes in one ear and out the other. And it's like you can watch the knowledge actually spill out of your head just a little bit. Like you tip your head and out it goes. Well, we have a very special guest with us today who has worked really hard at Electric Boat to help prevent that problem. Alex Hatem, welcome to the Shakeup.
Hi, thank you so much. Excited.
Alex. It's great to have you. So we just dig everything that you do about hands-on learning because it prevents this all the knowledge is tipping out of my head problem. Can you tell us a little bit about what is hands-on learning for you and about your role at EB in this as it pertains to this?
Yeah, so at EB, we have a lot of different modes of hands-on learning. People think of hands-on like actually using your hands, which we do have a lot of that in our active learning centers for our trade employees. But we also have hands-on learning for our planners and our designers who work on a computer all day, but they're doing hands-on learning by having, a sandbox or training environment in the tool, the software that they're using. Same with our leadership classes. We do a lot of, we are teaching you a topic and now you're going to get up and go and role play. And that would be hands-on for a leader in learning how to apply whatever skills or knowledge that they're learning in our class. So we have a lot of different modes of training, but in the hands-on, active learning is one of the biggest things that we try to embed in all of our training, whether it's for hourly trade workers who are working with their hands every single day, or a leader who's leading a team, but needs that hands-on practice to practice and hone those skills.
Yeah, practice is like in the Boulder Bible of what makes us for a successful leader. It's practicing small things every day, making incremental changes over time. I love that. And how did you come to be in leadership development? Is that where your career started?
So I started at Electric Boat as an engineer, and then a few years later, I moved into the shipyard as an operations supervisor, and I oversaw a crew of maybe 15 or so, maybe it's 10, outside machinists. So I was working on the Virginia-class submarine, new construction.
Cool.
It was a really fun opportunity, and I loved my crew. I loved the work. I do miss it a lot, but it was hard. It was tough, long hours. They always joke, outside machinist, you're outside. So we're in the elements all the time. And I actually did work on like the exterior of the ship. So
did you wear one of those little black caps that they always show in the movies? They always show people in shipyards wearing these little black caps that cover their ears.
They have them that like fit under your hard hat. Yeah. Yeah. Because we're out there in the freezing cold, rain, snow, sunny days, you get sunburn outside, but it was a lot of fun. But after, I had seen my time in that role coming to an end. My life was changing a little bit. So I decided there was an opportunity to start building out active learning centers for hourly employees in the trades in Groton. And so I jumped on that and I worked on building out that program, building out active learning centers, kind of the process and how we do that as a complement to our trade training. So that was kind of my entrance into the workforce development training world. After that, I moved into a different position, but similar in working on a program to help operations supervisors learn the skills that they need. So we call it the Deck Plate Leader Development Program, DLDP, and it's morphed into many different areas of training now. But so from that position, then I landed in the role I'm in now, the manager of enterprise learning programs, where I oversee leadership training, engineering, design, planning, curriculum development, our LMS, the learning management system administration. So
Wow.
that's
So
kind of
it's almost like, sorry, I got to jump on something that you made me think of, which is it's almost like you're like a journeyman. Like you started as your journey is sort of, you started as an apprentice, and then you learned how to do all the things, and you learned how to teach other people to do the things, and then now you're helping to, in the mastery role, help other people to learn how to do the things. Isn't that funny that it comes around that way?
Yeah.
Sort of through the history of humankind, that's how we've done things. And you've basically just mapped all of that out through your career. Going back a little further, your mom was a vet, your dad was an engineer, and you started to love building things when you were just a kid. Is that right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, I remember. So my dad, he's an electrical engineer, but he was also super hands-on. So I'd be out there, helping him work on cars. I don't know if I was really helping, but I was there, playing with the wrenches. And then I ended up working for my mom at her vet clinic. So I was a vet tech there. And, just getting to interact with all different types of people, because even though I love animals, animals all have owners. So there's people there. And then I ended up going to school at the University of New Hampshire for engineering. And I'd say that like a lot of that, when I was younger, the experience that I got, kind of helped me where I am today.
I have a question for you about, one of the things you said you designed was this supervisors training program. And we know that very often that's a deficit, that people get promoted to the next level they start as a sole contributor, they move up to that next level without being given a new set of tools to use. Right. So we like to joke around and say they had a hammer when they were a sole contributor, and now they have a hammer and they're a manager. And that's the only tool they have, is to be a hammer. Of the skills that you teach in that supervisory course, what do you think are the most essential gaps that program fills in terms of giving people confidence in becoming a supervisor or moving to that next level out of sole contributor roles?
Yeah, so I think, and I want to back up too. So DLDP is for operations supervisors specifically, but we have a program that's for all supervisors at EB called Intro to Supervision, or ITS. So that's actually the first piece that all supervisors go to, and then the ops supervisors go into there. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about ITS, and a lot of those skills are going from the worker to the leader. Gaining trust of your crew, you learning how to trust your crew, giving tasks, assigning tasks in a SMART goal fashion where somebody can understand like truly what are they supposed to be doing, whether it's daily. Our operations supervisors give daily briefs to their crew, or, over a 6-month period where an engineer will have, a task that they're working on. So I'd say that, we learn delegation, building a sense of community among your team, understanding that hammer is not really necessarily the right way to get things done. Maybe it was back in the 70s and the 80s in the shipyard environment, but that's not really how, us millennials or the Gen Zers or anybody else like to work. Work-life balance is important.
Life balance is really important. Wanted that, for the record. Right. Like, that was not a thing. I'd be like, you know what? Would you just boss me around and be a jerk to me all the time? I really want that in my career.
Right. And worked 80 hours a week. I feel like the shipyard is changing, and a lot of it, we're definitely trying to embed a lot of that into our supervisory programs. And then we build on it with manager training development, director and above training development. So we have leadership development in all those areas. And I think that that's a really important thing. And I do think it's helping with how EB manages and how our managers manage their people.
Mm. What have you, if you had somebody that was sort of like at that operator level, and they were thinking about going into a supervisory role, what do you think is the first best piece of advice that is important for someone in that role to be thinking about?
I think the biggest thing, and I'll say this from my perspective, if you don't know all of the technical work that your team is doing, that you're about to oversee this team, and that was the spot I was in. I came from engineering. I was across the river in New London, had really never been to the shipyard. I'd gone a few times, and I worked on ventilation for Columbia class, and then I was put on exterior for Virginia class. I had no idea what I was doing. Rely on your team. Ask questions, and don't go into it thinking that you need to put on a face of like, I know everything. I'm your new leader. You have to listen to me. Because that's really probably not going to get you far. You're not going to gain that trust of your team. So really just going in with an open mind to learn from your team like a sponge.
Yeah. And be humble. I heard a lot of humility.
Definitely. I almost didn't want to tell people I was an engineer going into the yard, just so that they didn't have like this preconceived notion about me or why I was there. You know, a lot of people say, well, engineers just come in to rotate and then they leave and they don't care. But that really wasn't the path I was planning to take. I wanted to learn as much as I could and be successful, make my team successful. And I think I really did that by really just letting them tell me about their work. What do they do? They've worked on, this XYZ system or whatever for, the past 12 boats. They're the expert. I don't know what I'm doing. So, and then I can be there and take from them and learn what my role is as a supervisor to make their job easier, break down barriers, get the material they need on time, make sure they have the tooling they need. So I think that was a long explanation, but I'd say that would be my advice.
Well, you pointed to something that we've heard from other podcast guests, and also from some of our just friends in the general vicinity of manufacturing here in the Connecticut scene. This it's not often talked about, this piece about differences in perspective between an engineer. Like a bad word to use here is classism, but like there's this sort of, there's a little friction sometimes that goes on between engineers and operators. And it sounds like that's a place where EB is really kind of nailing it in terms of having those relationships be much more smooth and respectful. Like, what do you think what's been some of the secret sauce that you've discovered works in that? Because I think some of our listeners would love to have some of that secret sauce.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times when it doesn't go right. So we have another development program called the CD program, the Career Development Program. It was actually started at EB back in the 80s, and then it stopped for a while. And then we picked it back up in like the 2015 timeframe, I think. And it actually brings degreed engineers into the shipyard to be operations supervisors. And I'd say we give them that tooling and that upfront knowledge of like, you need to understand that although you went to school for 4 years to learn the theory behind engineering, you don't necessarily have all of the knowledge that these trade operators or mechanics or welders or whatever have gotten over the last whatever many years that they've been working. And even when I went into the yard, I mean, some of my crew members who had been at EB for about the time I had, so 4-ish years, they were some of my rock stars. Even in that 4-year time, they had learned a lot. So I'd say, we kind of, we prepare engineers for that, like understanding you're not necessarily the person who knows everything just because you have a degree that says you know engineering.
Right. You know a lot, but you're not the expert.
Right.
I do have a question too. Obviously how long ago was it that you were doing that operations supervision stuff?
I went to the yard, I think it was 2015 or 16. So
Okay.
almost 10 years ago.
Almost 10 years ago. And obviously you are a woman and blonde. And like, how did you find people to support Like, was there any friction there? Did you get any pushback about that? And how did you sort of overcome any initial hesitancy? I heard you say you got their trust. I also know that you've been very involved with the ERG, so that's sort of where I'm sort of trying to guide you in terms of getting support from other women.
Yeah. So
There.
there's definitely, you know, it's still a shipyard. It's still a manufacturing environment. So, there's the stares, there's like oh, you don't, you're just a little girl, like whatever, but you just kind of brush that off. You don't pay attention. I'd call it out. I'd be like, oh, really? That's what you're going to say to me right now? Like, I'm a grown woman in a professional environment. So I feel like, and sometimes people aren't, that bold or maybe to say something like that. But for me, that was what I did. I just brushed it off, ignored the stares. But I also recognizing there's not a lot of females in the yard. There are a lot more now than there were 10 years ago, which is some of the work that EB's doing to do that. But at the time, one of my best friends, she was a pipe shop supervisor, and we started a women in operations leadership group. And we had some networking events, which were awesome. And that sort of morphed into the employee resource group that we have now called Forward. It's for Women's Advancement, Recognition, and Development at EB. And so right now I'm the treasurer of that ERG, and we launched officially in Women's History Month, March of 2021. And we just it was awesome. And we have, I want to say we have over like 800 members. Across, all of Electric Boat. We do a lot of different personal and professional development events throughout the year. And we just have a lot of fun. In March, so about a month ago, for Women's History Month, we had a lot of events, some great speakers and lunch and learns. And so, it was a lot of fun. I really like to be able to give other women opportunities to either meet mentors, make friends, and just even learn like what it is to be a professional woman in a male-dominated business.
Mm.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to. What I like about your perspective is that you're saying that you've made it a point to kind of always be taking the high road. Is sort of what it sounds like to me. Like there's I'm not going to give a ton of my energy to like defending myself or justifying myself or demanding anything. And that seems really smart to me, because sometimes we can get into a little bit of like a personal battle with ourselves and in our situations that actually ends up working against us.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we continue to put our attention on, this is a big giant problem, then we're actually amplifying the fact that it's a problem as opposed to orienting towards a solution. And it's like you've made that transition beautifully. Like, I'm not going to treat this as if it's going to kill me. I'm instead just going to work towards what I want. And I feel like that's a critical piece of the road that is before us right now in the way that women advance in industry. I'm actually going to just call that, I'm going to call that shake-up factor number one right there, is that I just learned a really cool thing from Alex. So shake-up factor number one, let's not amplify the problem. Let's amplify the solution. Like this solution orientation that you bring to the table is just so inspiring. Shake-up factor number two is that hands-on learning is not just for operators. It's for everybody. So think about where you're at in your life right now, friends, where you're at with your career. Where are you looking at things from too theoretical a lens, and you need to start putting some hands-on into it, right? Get messy, screw it up, fall down, pick yourself back up. Like, hands-on learning can be anything. It doesn't have to be literally hands-on. And then third shake-up factor that I'm hearing is when you're stepping into a leadership role, or you're thinking about stepping into a leadership role, I'm hearing let yourself be a learner and let yourself be supported. Let yourself rely on other people. right? It's cool to ask and it's cool to receive that help. And it's cool to be a student of the people who are best positioned to teach you what you need to know to take on that leadership role. And sometimes that means that you outrank them. Cool. So, Alex Hatem from Electric Boat, this was a brilliant bath in leadership today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks, Alex. The Manufacturing Shakeup is sponsored by the Connecticut Office of Manufacturing, produced by Maselli Productions and Gale Communications, and hosted by the Boulder Company.